Hello, I'm Andy Burke and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Tuesday the 25th of November. And we're reflecting back on two big departures from Rangers.
Some breaking news just announced the last couple of minutes. Rangers have removed Chief Executive Patrick Stewart and Sporting Director Kevin Thelwell from their posts with immediate effect.
The club's Chief Executive and Sporting Director both sacked. We'll look at the tenure of two figures who were unpopular with the fans.
The other team across in Glasgow, they've got the same problems with their management. Now hopefully we'll move forward and we'll start climbing the table. We'll start getting Rangers back on track.
We'll look at what's next for Rangers, and on the pitch there's action as Hibs travel to Motherwell.
I think the frustration comes from that because of what the standards were probably set, but it's probably just confirming to the players now, and that momentum and belief is starting to build. The recent results have been really positive.
Everything you need to know in the next 20 minutes or so.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Right, delighted to be joined this morning by BBC Scotland Chief Sports Writer Tom English and Joshua Barrie, editor of the Rangers Review. Joshua, I'm guessing a nice quiet Monday was disrupted yesterday when all hell broke loose at Ibrox.
Yeah, when you cover Rangers, Andy, that you know that when things are quiet, it's a sign that something is on the precipice of happening. But yeah, I think to answer your question in a roundabout way, there'd been a lot of pressure on these guys. I don't think anyone necessarily saw it coming in this way, it being done in this fashion. But here we are. Yeah,
we're going to get into Rangers. Plenty of stuff to discuss there. Tom, just briefly, news last night that Celtic's search for a new permanent manager looks to be heading towards a conclusion. Wilfried Nancy has been in discussions, we understand, with the club for quite some time, and that looks like it's now moving towards a conclusion.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's taken a wee while, but it looks like they're getting there. I'm a little bit surprised, I have to say. I think this is any appointment to a club like Celtic, particularly at times like this, where there's kind of a bit of dysfunction between the fans and the board, is a gamble. I think this is a major gamble. You could have said that the Ange Postecoglou was a gamble as well, and it was, but Postecoglou had done a lot more in the game than Wilfried Nancy has by the time he arrived at Celtic, and obviously he was a roaring success. And Nancy might be a roaring success as well. But I just think there's no real pedigree there. There's a lot of promise, clearly. A lot of people saying a lot of really nice things about him. But there's not a lot to go on to suggest that he can come into a club the size of Celtic in the state that Celtic are in terms of the hostility within. And make a good fist of it. But I wish him well. But it's an ambitious one, but I think it's a risky one.
Yeah, we will watch and see over the coming days. We'll do plenty more on Celtic and Wilfried Nancy as and when that appointment is confirmed. But we're going to focus on Rangers, guys, as we said at the top, and an extraordinary day yesterday with the club announcing that Chief Executive Patrick Stewart and Sporting Director Kevin Thelwell both been sacked. And Joshua, you obviously are in with the bricks at Rangers and know what's going on, get your finger on the pulse. We know these guys were under tremendous pressure, deeply unpopular with the fans, but the timing of this, I think it seems to have taken a lot of people by surprise.
It does, because obviously they've just overseen a managerial search. There's a small matter of a January window, which now kind of de facto falls to the sporting director's son, I guess, and the technical director that he'd appointed. And if this was going to happen, and listen, as you say, it had reached a point with Patrick Stewart, I think a long time ago, Andy, and with Kevin Thelwell, he'd kind of replaced Russell Martin on the banners, literally, hadn't he? And once it gets to that stage, although Danny Rule has lifted the mood somewhat, he's only done it somewhat, because even if you go to the game of the weekend, there wasn't a ton of protest. There wasn't the type of scenes you'd seen against Roma a few weeks ago, which I can barely remember that watching Rangers. And I've seen my fair share of protests over the years, but where there's so many banners popping up all around the pitch at so many angles that you struggle to keep track of it. And when it gets to a point like that, I think from a club ownership point of view, you think, well, is it broken? And if it's broken, I need to be quite proactive and fix it. Although it wasn't like that at the weekend against Livingston, Rangers are really struggling. This is a Livingston team that could very arguably have said they should have left Ibrox with 3 points, if not at least one. It is a Rangers team that Danny Rule has done well to get 4 wins in a row domestically with, but looking at that summer rebuild is struggling dramatically to be where it should be. And I think the most stinging line, although Andrew Kavanagh said he didn't want to throw dirt on either skilled executive, but I'm paraphrasing, but he said, when we think of the CEO and sporting director we need, it is not who Patrick and Kevin are. That's quite a big statement when Thelwell's only been there for 6 to 8 months and Stewart a little bit longer. So yeah, definitely a ruthless decision, but the timing, has it come too late? Interesting to see.
Yeah, it was a fascinating statement, Tom, wasn't it, from Andrew Kavanagh? He says we've had 6 months since we came to Rangers to assess the club's needs, as well as get to know Patrick and Kev a bit more. And simply put, when we think about what we need in both a chief executive and a sporting director, it's different than who we think Patrick and Kev are. We want people that align with the vision for the next chapter. As Joshua said, he said he didn't want to throw dirt, but it's not a ringing endorsement of what he's seen from these two guys in the last 6 months, is it?
Yeah, like he didn't elaborate on what he wants, but he did say, we don't want you guys. So there wasn't a lot of detail in terms of what alignment means. You know, what is being aligned with the vision of Kavanagh and Parak Marath? What does that mean? You know, he didn't give any details there. He just said, look, we don't want these guys. They don't align with what we wanted, with our vision. And that was the end of that. I think it had to happen. I was surprised, to be honest. I know there's been this crescendo of protest and, you know, Thelwell and Stewart being confronted in hotels and airports and European trips and all of that. And it was so messy and it was so ugly. You almost had to think, you're almost thinking, like Russell and Martin before them, these guys need to be taken out of their misery. Now they have been, but what's next? You know, it's in terms of sporting director, critical position clearly, but the world of football is full of fast talkers and underachievers and bluffers, quite frankly, in the sporting director world. And Rangers seems to have attracted to these guys over the years, not naming any names, but they seem to be weak to fast talkers, you know, who promise the sun, the moon, and the stars, and then don't deliver. So that is one side of it. In terms of the chief executive side of it, they took a long time to appoint Patrick Stewart. It wasn't the current owners, but they took a while to appoint Patrick Stewart, a man who had experience and who's been eaten up by the job. So getting another chief executive, and we know, Andy, how difficult it was for the Scottish Rugby Union to appoint a chief executive. They thought they had one, and then he got poached by the RNA. These really serious chief executives in the sports world, they're thin on the ground. So now, especially for a club like Rangers, and the unique set of skills that are required to survive at a club like Rangers in times like this, I think that's going to be a tough job.
Joshua, you outlined obviously how the fans and their anger played a big part in bringing this to a head, but I wonder how it was brought to a head internally. And we saw when Rangers were looking to replace Russell Martin, Steven Gerrard was in discussions. He said there was, you know, maybe stuff that he wasn't quite sure about coming back in terms of the structure of the club. Danny Rule, of course, appeared to rule himself out before then taking the job. All sorts of theories about maybe he has, you know, said he was not happy with the quality player that came in the summer, perhaps not happy with the quality of player that's been suggested for him in January. All sorts of things flying about. What are you hearing about how this internally came to a point where these guys, it was decided, had gone far enough?
Yeah, but you only have to look, Andy, back to, I think, under 200 days ago when you have Russell Martin flanked by Kevin Thelwell and Patrick Stewart at the top table. And there's your image that kind of sums up why. If we take the man that was to the left or right of him, I can't remember, Patrick Stewart, he's been in the job for less than a year. And as Tom says, when he arrived, he was seen as this experienced figurehead who should bring to a close an era of off-field drama dominating at Ibrox. And I would say that it's very arguable that has only increased. You go back to the backing and the double backing and sacking of Philippe Clement, the appointment of an interim team that was quite at odds with the then very ambitious appointment you made in a manager and a head coach in Russell Martin a few weeks later. And all the while, there seems to have been a lack of appreciation for how the noise can impact things at a club like Rangers until it's too late, until Russell Martin is walking across with a police escort, until, as Tom says, you're being confronted in hotels. And the latest managerial search, I think, shedded away credibility, if I'm honest. And then if we move across to Kevin Thelwell, Rangers needed to do two things right this summer. They needed to strengthen a squad and build a new spine to a squad that was tiring and that I think lacked leadership. They spent a lot of money without doing that, and they got their head coach appointment so dramatically wrong. And ultimately, there needed to be a fall guy for it. You can't ignore, Andy, that this is the weakest Celtic team in a long time. Yet Rangers have found themselves unable to put their foot to the metal and take advantage. I think that's been a real frustration for some staff internally, that look, we needed to be in a position to strike, and instead we are going through our own chaos and crisis that often we have created. Again, there's questions over timing, because Kevin Thelwell has been very involved in building out the infrastructure behind the scenes. It's now on Andrew Kavanagh and his ownership structure to, I guess, get it right, because there's not much that has gone right so far since the summer. I think Danny Rule has made a positive start, a positive impression with supporters. But as we've seen with Michael Beale winning his first 4 games, Philippe Clement winning his first 4 games, this is a big, big job, and you need the right circumstances around you to get it right. And clearly with his statement yesterday, he feels that those two guys are not going to be able to help someone like Rule do that.
Well, that statement, Tom, and as Joshua said, it's been a crazy season in which both sides of Glasgow have been in turmoil, and it's normally one or the other, but fans on both sides deeply unhappy. Say what you want about Andrew Kavanagh, but he put that statement out and it was straight out in front of the Sky Sports cameras, and I saw a few Celtic fans drawing the comparisons with their club and their lack of interaction with the media. Michael Nicholson did an in-house interview, which I think most Celtic fans found quite uninspiring, to say the least. Andrew Kavanagh seems to have shown a bit of a ruthless streak here, and an ability to go up and face up to his decisions.
Yeah, yeah, he has. And before he did all that, there was a kind of a Q&A for the media before the decision was announced, to give us a heads up on it, and we could ask him whatever we liked. So that was a bit of access which you don't get across the other side of the city. So I think that was good PR, quite frankly. It was a brutally hard day for Andrew Kavanagh to remove these two guys, but they kind of had to be removed, really. And it doesn't do anything to stop the revolving door at Rangers stop revolving. I mean, it's, you think of managers, chief executives, chairmen, sporting directors, or directors of football, or whatever you want to call them. It's an astonishing, over the last 7, 8, 9 years, maybe up to 10 years, the list of names is astonishing. There's no stability there whatsoever. And I guess that's where Kavanagh wants to get to, is stability. Looking at the decision, I mean, the end of October, when Danny Rule was announced, Kavanagh was all on board with Thelwell and Patrick Stewart. What's changed since then? It's hard to know. We didn't find that out. But the club accounts have come out since then. And what is apparent, and it's always apparent, but it's just another reminder that Rangers recorded heavy losses, but record revenues. And it's so clear that Rangers' reliance on gate receipts and European money, particularly European money, but also gate receipts, is critical to the existence of this club. So the fans and the money they spend is absolutely paramount of importance. And annoying those fans and having those fans railing against two people at the club is not really good for business. You don't want to upset your fan base when your fan base is really keeping the doors open. So you could look at it from that perspective. I'm not saying that's why he did it, but it's maybe part of why he did it.
Yeah, and that's stability that has just been non-existent at Rangers pretty much, Joshua, for so long. They need to find it somehow, and you outlined near the top, we're a little over a month away from the January transfer window. If Rangers are to do anything this season, you'd imagine they'll need to repair some of the damage from the summer business and get a bit more quality in. I mean, they need to move quickly in getting these appointments of a chief executive and a sporting director. But as Tom said, it's not as easy as all that. It takes a bit of time to find the right characters.
It does, yeah. And Andrew Kavanagh, again, speaking yesterday, said that, paraphrasing, but he said that we want it to be the quality over timing, effectively, of appointment, which I think is right. But if you're looking at the January window, it's a very difficult one to get right. And if you're looking at what Rangers did in the summer, where they spent a lot of money, and I think almost just felt like they hadn't learned lessons of previous seasons, and the new ownership will be given a bit of time and a bit of grace period to learn those lessons, but you only get so much patience in Glasgow, don't you? So it's a difficult window, and while I'm sure there is more to this current Rangers squad than they are showing, at the moment, I still think they're relying on the exact same core as last season of Tavernier and Butland and Raskin, guys that were frozen out at parts earlier in the season. You look at the apparent new spine that was recruited this summer, and it's come a game like Livingston at the weekend at home. That is the type of game you expect these guys to dominate and run, and it's late November and we're not seeing it. So what this means for the January window and the current season, there's a lot of questions about that, but clearly this decision needed to be made sooner rather than later. And as Tom says, maybe after the accounts, maybe just a bit of time after Rules got into the job. We don't know what he thinks of the squad because he's not communicated it publicly. Maybe these things have just tipped Kavanagh over the edge to make him catalyse a new start.
Yeah, Kevin Thelwell's track record in terms of transfers, Tom, it doesn't make for great reading, does it? Perhaps best encapsulated by £8 million for Yousaf Chermiti, which I think a lot of people looking at the bare stats of his goal return were baffled by at the time. I don't think anyone's any less baffled having seen him in action.
No. Look, if you're being kind, you'd say young player still finding his feet in a new league at a club that's in a bit of turmoil. Not easy. But the flip side is, I think we can all recognise an £8 million player when we see him. Even when an £8 million player, when he's struggling, you can see certain things that make you go, oh, okay, that's interesting. Look at that. I haven't seen any of that really from Chermiti. I feel for him because the £8 million is not his. It's not his doing, but it is it's a burden he has to carry. And it's obviously weighing him down. He's got no track record to suggest he's an £8 million player. I'm still mystified that deal was done. Utterly perplexed by it. When there were other players out there at a fraction of the cost that are proven. And yet they go with this guy, Kevin Thelwell. I don't know what he was thinking here. Was he trying to double down on his decision to sign him for Everton in the first place? Was he trying to prove to himself and to the world, no, this guy is a star, and using Rangers money to try and prove that? I don't know, but it made no sense then when you look at Chermiti's track record, and it makes no sense now that we've seen a bit of what he's got to offer. It was a bizarre signing for a level of money that Rangers cannot afford. It was just, I struggle to find the words to explain how confused I am about that one.
Yeah, confusing is the word. And you mentioned, Joshua, Kevin Thelwell's son was brought into the operation. Robbie Thelwell, not so long ago. No word on him. He's just in the door. He will be left to, presumably at the moment anyway, pick up the pieces and keep the show on the road until there's a sporting director brought in.
Yeah, well, you've also got Dan Purdy as a technical director who Kevin Thelwell obviously brought to the club, and he's appointed a head scout, chief scout in recent weeks. He's appointed a head of academy who will join in the new year, and obviously the set piece coach who started at the weekend, and by all accounts he comes with quite a good track record. I think the Robbie Thelwell decision, and it's not to discredit him because he has his own career, and yeah, but the political capital to make a decision like that, or the use of Trumiti, just didn't exist. And when you make these decisions, if you take Trumiti in isolation, Rangers' striking position is weaker than it was last season. And last season it needed a bit of help. Rangers' wide options at the moment are weaker than last season. Rangers' centre-back options are weaker than last season. And you go right through the squad, and that's why pressure was inevitably going to grow. So I think when that decision came out, Andy, it was a long way back, because if you get it right at a club like Rangers or Celtic or other clubs in Scotland, but especially in Glasgow, then I think the fans can give you so much power and so much momentum. If you get on the wrong footing with them and you start to work against them, it makes your job much more difficult. And what we've seen so far this season is Rangers have not been able to harness that through all these little political decisions that have stacked up and culminated this decision like that one Kevin Thelwell made, which, as I say, I think only certain people at a club like Rangers could get away with, and you'd have to have a much more bulletproof track record in order to survive that type of thing long term in the court of public opinion.
It is incredible. Like Kevin Thelwell, like even if his son was a bit of a superstar, the optics of Kevin Thelwell in the position that he was in, as in struggling and a target for the fans, for him to appoint his own son, I just don't get it. Like
it was another log on the fire, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly, another log on the fire. You don't do that. You don't do it. Even if you're in a position of strength, as Josh was saying, you don't do it. But he's done it now, and he's exposed his son to this. It's almost like Kevin Thelwell was the kingmaker here, signing all the players, bringing in all. I mean, he kind of was, and he was allowed to do it. And maybe Andrew Kavanagh, I don't know, maybe there's a bit of guilt there that he's allowed Thelwell to have free reign here, spend fortunes. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche at this stage, but it's still true that Rangers have spent north of 30 million, their words, and they made the team worse. I mean, how the hell do you do that? It's bizarre. It's almost an achievement in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's weird.
It's been quite a few months, and Joshua, we saw the reaction and the scenes when Andrew Kavanagh and the 49ers group completed their takeover, and of course, as any club would be in this situation, the fans hoping it's signalling a bright new dawn and things will change from here on in. And it's very early in the process. They may well get to Rangers to where they want them to be, but it's been a bumpy first 6 months or so, and they've had quite the introduction to Scottish football.
Yeah, but bumpy's diplomatic, isn't it?
I'm trying my best.
Yeah, no, but I think it depends what happens in the next. If we look back on this in 2 years and they've got the right CEO and the right sporting director in, and Danny Rule's won a title, then you cast off this 6 months as, oh, that was funny, wasn't it? Remember those first 6 months where all these things happened? But I think Tom said about Patrick Stewart, the role kind of ate him up. That will happen up here if you're not ready for it. And I think very quickly what new ownership will have realised is, while this place is unique, Andrew Kavanagh kind of said that when they sacked Russell Martin and appointed Danny Rule. This place is unique. The politics of it matters so much. Again, as Tom rightly says, even if the incremental positives of an appointment like Robbie Thelwell, even if he's the best player recruiter in the Championship in England, you've got to weigh up well, what is that going to get me and what is it going to cost me? And too much this summer, since the summer, it has felt like these decisions have been taken by not doing the simple act of going out and testing the wind, testing the atmosphere, and not reacting to it, not being bound by it, but utilising it. Use it to your advantage. And it will make life a whole lot easier for you. So what comes next, of course, will define their legacy. I think you're right. Although Andrew Kavanagh doesn't want to make a habit of fronting up to mistakes, it is a positive that he is fronting up to mistakes and owning them instead of just sending someone else to do it and staying over the pond in America. But I also think there's huge pressure on these appointments now, and there's pressure on them to start getting right because, as you say, for the hope and optimism of May, it hasn't exactly been a barrel of laughs since then.
Yes, to put it mildly. Fascinating times at Rangers. I feel like we've been saying that for a long, long time, but it'll be very interesting to see where they go next. Just before we go, Tom, let's briefly talk about Motherwell versus Hibs. I think there'll be goals in this. I think we can be fairly certain of that, can't we?
You'd hope. Well, it's going to be 0-0 now that you've said that, isn't it? But I doubt it will be 0-0. Both clubs on the up, both with a lot of attacking players playing good football, and it's. I've got high hopes for this one. We're obviously where everyone's talking about the travails of Rangers and Celtic and the success of Hearts, still top of the league, although they've faltered a wee bit recently. But the Motherwell and the Hibs stories are really encouraging as well, particularly Motherwell. I think Hibs kind of expect Hibs to be up there, even though they haven't been for, all of the time. But they've really done well under David Gray, playing good stuff. Motherwell is a surprise packet, and a really good surprise. Earlier on in the season, they were playing good football, but weren't getting the points. They were throwing away a lot of points. Now they're starting to accumulate. Their good football is getting its reward. So I'm looking forward to this game.
Yeah, should be a cracker. Well, that's all we've got time for, guys. It's been a pleasure. Many thanks to Tom and Joshua, and thanks to you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. But for now, on the pod, from Joshua, from Tom, and from me, thanks for listening.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.